Hi, for today's project I'm going to show you how to turn a small box on the lathe. These boxes are fun and easy to make. They make great gifts to give to people to keep on their desk at work in order to keep change for the soda machine. What makes this project even easier is that we're going to use a forstner bit in order to hollow the vessel. This will give us a really clean and precise opening in order to hold the change. For today's project, I'm going to use a nicely figured piece of sycamore. You could pretty much use any variety of wood for this project. If you want to practice, you could even square off a clean, knot-free section of a 2x4 and practice with that first. Once we get our stock mounted between centers in the lathe, the first thing we want to do is round it off with a roughing gouge. Check around this by laying our tool on top of the wood. Still have a little bouncing, so we'll round it off a little bit more. That's pretty good now. Nice and round and smooth. The next thing we're going to do is cut a tenon on each side of our stock. I prefer to use a bidon for this task, but you could use anything you prefer, like a parting tool or even a skew chisel. Now we'll move over and cut a tenon on the other side. Okay, the next thing we need to do is cut this piece of wood into two pieces. One part will be the body of the vessel, and the other part will become the lid. We can use a parting tool and do this on the lathe, but I find it easier just to take it over to the bandsaw and cut it there. Next, we'll take the larger piece that's going to become the body of our box and we mount it onto our chuck. Now we're going to hollow out our box. First thing we have to do is select a forstner bit that's slightly larger than a quarter. In this case, I've chosen a 1-inch bit. Okay, now we remove our live center from the tailstock and we replace it with a drill chuck that's attached to a number 2 Morse taper. You can purchase these for about $30. And now we can insert our forstner bit into the drill chuck. Now I'm going to use my depth gauge to set the depth of the cut I'm going to make with the forstner bit. Now we move our tailstock in to engage the forstner bit. We want to reduce our lathe speed. Whenever cutting with a large bit like a forstner bit, you want to have a very slow speed. Lock down the tailstock. We turn our tailstock knob in order to advance the bit. Slowly tighten it in. Every so often we want to back out the bit in order to clear out any sawdust. We re-engage. Back it back out. Now we're going to move our tailstock a little closer. And we continue cutting with the bit. All right, we'll check our depth. Perfect. Now I'm going to use a spindle gouge in order to shape the box. At this point, we turn the lathe speed back up. Now that we're pleased with the shape of our box, it's time to sand. I'll start out with 150 grit sandpaper. I'm going to slow down the speed of the lathe and proceed to sand. Now I'm going to move to 240 grit. My lathe is reversing, and this is a big advantage when sanding. You can get some of the fibers that are forced to lay down when you sand in one direction. I reverse the lathe again, and this time I move the 320 paper. I now move the 400 grit. And I finish with 600 grit. At this point, I'm going to slightly define the end of the box. Remember to turn your lathe speed back up. I'm going to use a parting tool for this task. Now the finish I prefer to use is friction polish. If you're unfamiliar with friction polish, you can refer to one of the videos on my YouTube channel where I show you how to make your own and apply friction polish. You want to have a very high lathe speed. Make sure you apply the friction polish to a paper towel. Never use a rag. Apply the polish. Then we take a dry part of the rag and we burnish it in. You can feel the heat build up. This is what you want. And there we have after a single coat of friction polish. Now we're going to put another coat on. Apply the polish. Once again, take a dry portion of the paper towel and we burnish it in. And we continue the process until we build up approximately 5 to 7 coats of friction polish. And here's what it looks like after 5 coats of friction polish. You can see it really brings out the shine and makes the grain pop. Now at this point, we're not going to part off the box because we're going to have to remount it later. It's a good idea to make a pencil mark in the middle of your jaw number 1. It helps with realigning the box later. And now I remove the piece from the chuck. At this point, we're going to place the smaller piece we prepared into the chuck. This piece will become the lid. We'll move our tool rest back into place. Now we want to cut a tenon that's going to fit into the box. Once again, I use a bidon, but you can use a skew chisel or a parting tool. We turn off our lathe and we size up the tenon with the box. Still a ways to go. We're getting there, a little bit more. And there we have a nice snug fit. I'm going to use a parting tool, set the dimensions for my lid. And I'll roughly shape it with the spindle gouge. Now we're going to remount our box, lining up the pencil mark with the center of the number 1 jaw. Now I'll show you a neat trick. I'm going to replace the live center with what's called a 60-degree live center. And I move the live center and I put the cone of the 60-degree live center into our vessel. Slightly tighten the live center, and that will align the box back up to be true again. Now I take the key and I tighten the jaws. When I back off the live center, our box should turn true again. And it does. Now I'm going to place the lid into the box. Move our tool rest back in. And now I can do the final shaping on the lid. I'm going to use a smaller spindle gouge and it's a good idea to make very fine, delicate cuts at this point. It's a good idea to move the tailstock in to add some support. Now we'll back off the tailstock so we can clean up the tip. And now we're going to sand our lid. Remember to slow down the lathe. Go back to our 150 grit. And we progress through our grits. Until once again we reach our 600 grit. Once again we're ready to apply friction polish. Remember to turn your lathe up and burnish it in. And we'll apply the friction polish till we build up 5 coats. And there we have it, a lid that looks every bit as good as the body of the box. Now we're going to put off our box. It's a good idea to make the bottom of the box slightly concave towards the center. That way the box will stand up straight. Now at this point we could simply sand and finish the bottom of the box and be done. But there's also another way. Let me show you. Remember that tenon I told you not to throw away? We're going to use it for a waste block? You can use that or what's left from cutting the box off. And we want to cut a tenon that we can mount the box on. And there we have a nice snug fit. And now with our box reverse mounted, we can clean up the bottom. Once again leaving it slightly concave. Now we'll sand, we'll slow down the lathe speed, and go through our grits again. To once again arriving at our 600 grit. And now we'll apply friction polish to the bottom. Once again, burnishing it in. Put another coat on. And continue to build up the finish until we have our 5 coats. And there we have a bottom that looks every bit as nice as the rest of the vessel. The last step would be to apply some friction polish by hand to the inside tenon of the lid. Polish it up. And here we have our finished lathe box. We're even able to match up the grain with the body and the lid. Okay. We have a nice secure fit, a really nice clean hollowing done by the Forstner bit, and it works. In a few short minutes, we're able to take this and turn it into this. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching.